Hey everybody, it's Dan the Chess Enthusiast, and I'm sorry that I haven't been able to make videos for the last couple of months. The summer has just been really crazy, but now that it's winding down, things have gotten back to normal, and I hope to be able to make videos again fairly regularly. For today's video, I chose to look at a game that I played online under standard time controls, where I was able to use the King's Gambit accepted to secure a victory. So let's take a look. The game opens up with obviously the King's Gambit accepted right here. I developed the knight out to f3. My opponent plays knight to c6, which is not really a very common move in the position. Usually what you might see is either the Shallop defense, which I'll be covering in a video very soon, I hope, which is knight out to f6, or you can see the modern defense, which is an immediate pawn to d5, or even the Fischer defense, which is pawn to d6. But like I said, that's not what my opponent played. He developed a knight out to c6. I responded by thrusting forward my d-pawn, establishing two pawns in the center, and opening up my bishop for an attack on the pawn on f4. My opponent defended by playing pawn to g5, which is kind of starting to look like the classical continuation of the King's Gambit accepted. For those of you who don't know, the classical variation is this pawn setup right here, where you have the pawn on f4 and it's being defended by the pawn on g5. The move order has been changed up a little bit, but that's what we're starting to get into, a classical King's Gambit accepted continuation. From here, I developed my bishop out to c4, kind of an aggressive move, putting a lot of pressure on f7 right away. And here my opponent makes a really big blunder and pushes the pawn to f6. Now, this is a big blunder because I think it was my Allgaier Gambit video that I talked about. What this allows is basically the knight to come in and capture the pawn on g5, and then after black recaptures, the queen comes out to h5, and this is just really strong. Before I continue with the game and show you how it all turned out, I just want to go back here very quickly. In this position, I think my opponent missed a move. I think a much better move in this position would have been simply to push the pawn to d5, which is first of all attacking my bishop on c4, and second of all opening up access for black's light square bishop after I capture the pawn. Bishop down to g4, and I didn't look at this variation anymore because there's just, it's really early in the opening. It's difficult to find the so-called best variation, but this definitely would have been favorable to what happened in the game after the pawn push to f6. So as I said, I captured, he recaptured, and I brought the queen out to h5. The only move available here is to move the king to e7, and here I played queen captures on g5, hitting another check. However, when I looked at this later, it turns out that I missed a mate. A better move in this position would have been for me simply to bring the queen to f7, hit a check, forcing the king back to d6, and from here I could push the pawn, hitting another check, forcing the knight to capture on e5. From here the queen can come down to d5 and hit a check, forcing the king back, and from here the queen captures the knight, and that's checkmate. So that was a forced mating pattern that I missed in the game. As I said, in this position, instead what I did was I captured the pawn and hit a check. From here, black developed its knight out to g6. I'm sorry, to f6 to block the check. And from here, now what I could have done is push the pawn immediately, attacking that pinned knight, but instead what I wanted to do was develop one more piece before going forward with the attack, and here I just developed my bishop and captured on f4. From here, the pawn comes down to try to chase away the queen, but I just pull the queen back to h4 and maintain the pin on the knight. The bishop comes out to protect the knight, but from here, now I push the pawn to e5, attacking the pinned knight. Now, black tried maybe some sort of tactic by capturing on d4, and then what I saw here is that if the knight captured on c2, that would be forking my king and my rook. I'm not quite sure how dangerous that would have been, because black is definitely the side that is needing to defend in this position, and bringing a piece away from the center and putting a knight on the corner of the board on a1 is definitely not what black wants to do. But nonetheless, when I saw this, I decided to just get out of any sort of tactic like that right away and castle. Now, of course, this still leaves my rook on a1 hanging, because if the knight comes to c2, then the rook is cornered and has nowhere to move. However, now that I've castled, I have yet another piece in the mix. I've got this rook sitting on the open f file, and this position right here is still really, really strong for white. So the game continues with the knight coming to f5, attacking the queen, and from here I just simply capture the knight with a check. The bishop recaptures on f6. I slide the rook over to e1, forcing the king to f7. And then from here, I just move the queen to h5. And what this is doing is threatening a checkmate on f7. So to defend against that, first the bishop plays to d4, hitting a check, forcing my king into the corner onto h1. And then from here, the queen is able to get to f6, and defend that f7 check square. From here, though, there's a sequence in the game that I was able to employ to finish the game up fairly quickly here. First, it starts with my rook coming to e8. The king is forced to g7. From here, I capture the rook on h8, and it's pretty much game over. I'm up a lot of material, and black's king has absolutely no defense. Unfortunately for black, it played a worse move in the position. It decided to try to capture back the material with the king, but what this allowed me to do was hit a check with the queen, and after the king plays to h7, queen to g8 is checkmate, and that's how the game ended. So, you know, a nice little game. I had a lot of fun playing it. I've been using the King's Gambit a lot in my own play, because that is the opening that I've been covering a lot of my videos, and I just want to explore it and look at a lot of different positions and plays in it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.